Yeah, I think that's actually one of the most interesting aspects of it, and one of the things that would scare me the most, because obviously, like, I mean, you start to lose your mind, and like your brain power and all of that. It's very scary to think of going down that route. I think the first paper I saw posted on that, I saw it a few years ago. I don't know how old it is, but it started to show. It was basically saying, there was some brain damage, or I don't want to misquote it, so maybe I'll link the paper. I'm sure you've seen it, but basically just saying that there was some damage in performance enhancing drug users. And that's scary to think about, because we just don't know that much about it. It's not like, hey, well, I can take a statin, or I can take an ARB, and I can kind of protect, the cardiovascular system. I don't imagine that we have a lot of evidence for things to protect that.
No, I think the only thing that we can maybe make an assumption towards, or a hypothesis towards, is oxidative stress and protecting neurons from being damaged by free radicals. And obviously, the issue here is, if anyone doesn't realize, when you damage a neuron in your brain, we don't have neurogenesis. We don't have neurogeneration properties, that when a neuron is effectively damaged, we can't repair it. What ends up happening is we have neural branching, where your synapses, your brain can basically start sending stems out from other neurons to try and make connections. So rather than having a higher number of neurons in the brain, you've got greater connections. So it's almost like you've got 5 telephone lines, and now one of them has broke. So now you're branching, telephone line 1 and 2 to try and take the same volume of calls that 5 would have taken. But it's still not at the same speed as if you had that free telephone line, that once that neuron's effectively dysfunctional, it's useless. The brain just ignores it and tries to branch off to try and send signals as fast as it can. We've got very limited data towards brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, and that sort of became a hype thing within the supplement realm, and this sort of supplement influencer online of take this supplement to increase BDNF, and people pushing the likes of lion's mane and ginkgo biloba, stuff that we know have what you could say mild neural protection properties. Again, they're acting as antioxidants. They're just trying to protect the neuron from being damaged by superoxide or hydrogen peroxide, whatever free radicals being made by our cells. And there really, like you said, there really isn't anything that you can tell someone that you take this supplement every day if you're a steroid user and your brain's going to be fine.
Right.
And that paper that you said, it's probably the same paper. It's a case controlled study where they done IQ tests between people who didn't take nandrolone and people who did take nandrolone.
Mm-hmm.
And they found the IQ that those who used nandrolone was much lower than the non-users. Now, it's not the most accurate in terms of study design, because you can't say that these, I think it was 6 and 6, that these 12 people are of equal intelligence prior to anabolic steroid exposure. So you can never control. For all they were trying to test here was spatial awareness and spatial reasoning was different in the 6 people who used nandrolone versus those who didn't. And we start to understand that.
Well, I was going to say, because we've mostly talked about testosterone, and that obviously itself can cause problems, but I would imagine that some of these other drugs that people take, maybe it's even more so amplified.
Yeah, we definitely see there was one study, but again, we don't have any human controlled studies. So what we really tend to try and rely on is animal models here to try and understand what happens in an animal model and what's the likelihood of extrapolating that same data to humans, which, for the likes of rats, rabbits are sort of case controlled animals with similar genetics. We're able to form hypotheses, but never ever say conclusively, this is what's happening. But there's a paper that they studied baldanone or equipoise or EQ, whatever way you want to call it, in rabbits. And we found quite a large increase in oxidative stress towards oxidative stress markers in the blood. And correspondingly, then when you administer, an antioxidant alongside boldenone, you see this drop in oxidative stress as a protection strategy in quotes, that we're trying to offset some of that damage that's being induced, more so probably as a result of probably cellular efficiency. So your mitochondria are probably making more free radicals as a consequence of energy turnover, and without supporting that internal antioxidant system, we start to see that dysfunction. So if the person's not supplementing with more so nutritionally from vitamin E, vitamin C, vitamin A, what the cell uses naturally to protect itself as a sacrificial molecule, that's when the dysfunction sets in.
Sure. Yeah. I did actually find the study. I think I can send it to you in the chat here. Let me see. Did that pop up on your end there?
It did, yeah. Let's open up here.
So for people listening, titled Long-Term Anabolic Androgenic Steroid Use is Associated with Deviant Brain Aging. This was in 2021. So May 2020.
Last year. And that's probably, if you do like a PubMed study and you search related articles, I'm fairly certain that the nandrolone one, if we even go down to the references, I think I read this last year.
Yeah.
It'll reference the paper about the
yeah. So I'll definitely link this below for people interested, but just a quick conclusions. The findings suggest long-term high dose AAS use may have adverse effects on brain aging, potentially linked to dependency and exaggerated use of AAS. So again, I read the study, but it is just interesting to see more people talk about it and more of that coming out, because I don't think that was really ever talked about, other than people talking about like roid rage, but I don't think people really ever talked about it before.
Yeah, and I mean, what really sort of led me down this path of research was more so seeing that sexual dysfunction post use of like harsh androgens like trembolone, that we know have a really high affinity for the androgen receptor, and the potential, again, from animal research, the neurotoxicity that comes from these 19 nor testosterone derivatives, that again is that dopamine issue post trembolone use as a consequence of destroying neurons that help with dopamine signaling, so you're not transmitting dopamine as fast enough compared to the electrical potential issue. Without an accurate brain scan, you can't really say that that region of neurons are damaged or not. But this is sort of an area that I would really like to see androgen researchers start broadening their base into. But again, this would be more so research that's aimed towards not even safer use, to offset use, to try and educate and warn of the dangers mainstream, that the consequences of these compounds, are they really worth effectively, like you said there a minute ago, losing your mind?
Yeah. Do you think that, because I know you've talked before about not just, hey, coming off anabolics, but actually avoiding thrill-seeking behavior and things like that. Do you think that that's just kind of becoming this more like global issue with people? Because obviously more and more there's social media and TikTok. Like I refuse to download TikTok. And somebody said, I forget who it was, but they said, well, no, you should download it. It's like, it's really funny, or you'd really like it. And to me, it's like, I'm not saying I wouldn't like it. I just don't want to go down that path, because I'm already pretty obsessed with my phone. Like I'm always on my phone. There's just always some stimulation, or I feel like I could be listening to something, reading something. I want to always be productive. So I have a hard time stepping back and actually setting time to like just be by myself or meditate or things like that,
Yeah, I'm probably the same type of personality. It definitely is the culture of the environment. But again, you have to sort of view what way you're utilizing that environment, like you said. So you're probably like me, that you're probably on your phone all the time, but it's always from a learning objective. So you're looking at things on social media that add value to your life, that you're learning something new, you're reading something new, you're in pursuit of knowledge as opposed to pursuit of constant entertainment and
Correct,
constant, stimulation from an entertainment perspective. And so I think it really depends on, again, is that a personality trait, or is that, just something that we understand we have this very powerful tool now that at our disposal, we've reached to millions of people that are sharing information daily that we can access and improve our lives with.